preparing to stream a live meeting. And it says that the meeting is streaming. So welcome everyone to the resources meeting on today, 8th of July, 1921, whatever my first agenda said. I have corrected that.
Could you make it 2021?
2021. Did I say 1921? Okay, we'll get that right. I will definitely get that right. Okay, as this is the first meeting of the Resources Committee in this council, your first job this evening is to elect a chair. Do I have any nominations for chair?
Well, I would like to propose Alistair Pike.
Okay.
And I would like to second Alistair.
Okay. Do I have any other nominations? No, in which case, Alistair, you are appointed chair of this committee, and I hand the chair to you.
Thank you very much. Item 2 on the agenda is the election of a deputy chair. And I say that I would like to propose Graham for this very simple reason that he is very highly qualified in this field, probably more so than me, and his support in previous years has been very welcome. So I would like to propose Graham as the deputy.
And I would like to second that proposal.
Thank you.
Do I have any other nominations? No? Okay, we're elected.
Thank you. On the basis that we have 8 people on screen, I would assume that there are no apologies for absence.
Correct, I have received no apologies.
Okay. The minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 11th of March, we didn't manage to look at the year-end accounts because they hadn't been finalised at that point. But we did make the point that there probably would be a residual surplus at the end of the year due to the fact that we had received less income, but also spent considerably less as a result of activities being curtailed. Clark gave an update on the water fountain, and as that will be on this evening's agenda, I don't see any point in commenting on that at the moment. That is probably also the case with regard to the dementia-friendly toilets and the refurbishment, which again, we're going to have an update on this evening. Under requests for expenditure, there was an item associated with the community garden and a funding bid to the community board. And that was on a matched funding basis. So we were looking for 9,500 from the community board, and we would match fund that to the same amount. Anita declared an interest and went into the waiting room, and the result of the discussion that took place was that it was resolved to approve the project, and the match funding was provided from the surplus for the current year. We also talked about the situation with regard to Park Lane allotments and had an update there, and I think Clark will give us a further update this evening. With regard to Malthouse Square, we were advised about the recommendation from the Open Spaces Committee to select Wicksteed as the recommended supplier. And it was further suggested to investigate adding CCTV at the site for extra safety. One key thing that we also did was to approve a further £10,000 to be allocated from our project surplus to take into reserves to help with funding the project. basically, as you remember, we've been allocating about £10,000 a year to build up so that we had a sum of money towards the replenishment equipment. And I think the notion is that we are trying to get into a position where halfway through the, well, let's say when we get to a point of replenishing equipment, we should have half the money already reserved. And then during the life of the new equipment, we continue to reserve for the next cycle of replenishment. So where we are at the moment, which was we've got half the money and we're replacing the equipment. So by the time that equipment is sort of halfway through its life, we should have paid what we owe for this equipment and be halfway there again with the reserves that we will be allocating. And as I say, it's really at the level of £10,000 per annum. So that was where we were on that particular item. And I think that really was the main highlights. There were some part 2 minutes, but they will be covered under the part 2 agenda this evening.
I think Andrea has a question.
Sorry.
Alistair, may I ask, the £10,000 that you're putting into this fund, is that just for Malthouse Square, or does that cover Hotspur Park as well? Because obviously they have to have some kind of maintenance program as well. Yeah. Does that cover both?
It didn't, but it will, because basically when we had the discussion last time around, I think in open spaces, it was agreed that whatever provisioning is made should not only take into account Malthouse Square, it should take into account Garvin Avenue, and it should take into account the Hotspur playground. So yes, all three will be provided for, and we may have to increase that 10,000 a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, right. So at that point, I'm going to ask the clerk to give her report, and I would make the comment that under item 9, which is the update on drinking fountain, and item 12, which is allotments, we may as well ask you to report on those all together now, please.
Okay, can I just ask you to take a resolution on approving the minutes?
Yep.
So that I have to have you have a vote to say that they're approved.
Yes.
Okay.
I approve. Yep.
Thank you. Yes, right. So the water fountain, which has been going on for such a long time, eventually, I suspect that Anita may have got involved a little bit in this, because I received a phone call from the estates team at Buckinghamshire Council to say, we are definitely going to approve the use of the land. I have to have the landowner's approval. So it still did take a little while to come through, but they did give their permission, which means that we're moving ahead with the certificate of lawfulness, which is a different department and a different set of hoops to jump through. But now that we have the landowner's permission, there should be nothing to object to. It's just a process to go through. So that's absolutely great news. The Water Fountain Group have also raised some more money. They're getting their quotes sorted with Affinity Water and the contractors to do the work. And hopefully with the revised scheme, it's a bit less money anyway. So I know that they've been in discussion with Tracy, our new assistant clerk and finance person, and they've been reconciling the monies that we hold for them. We hold their money in a ring-fenced fund, which we'll probably talk more about a little bit later. And so that's ready to rock and roll once the permissions are through. The community garden as well, or the community allotment work, has started this week, because obviously the match funding was agreed through the community board. We perhaps haven't communicated with our immediate neighbours there as well as we might have done, because there is a digger there and people did get a little bit concerned about what we were doing. And if I'll carry on with a bit with allotments, as Alistair has suggested. We have still got allotments there that are not being used fully or not being maintained. Jeanette is looking at this at the moment. She's talking to a lot of allotment holders. Some are very reluctant to let go of allotments, and others are also not letting them go, but also not working them. So we have our usual maintenance problems there. Also, some of the stuff which is not being worked got very overgrown. So we've actually contracted with someone to just go and trim and mow the whole lot. So it's looking a lot tidier, apart from the big digger there this week. They'll probably be there for the rest of this week at least. And then, but it has created new allotments. Our list will be coming down. As I say, there's a bit of a fight with some of the people at the moment, just to clarify what the situation is, but hopefully we will be getting that sorted. As I say, the list is well done, and we continue to see if we can lease additional land, probably in the old town or area. We haven't been successful yet, but we are putting out inquiries to local landowners to see if we can do that. And actually the amount of space that we're likely to need is going to be considerably less than we thought it would be, but we will continue to look at that. So the other thing is that Alistair mentioned that at the last meeting we weren't able to produce the finances. I didn't have a finance officer at the time, and I was very behind. We now have a finance officer and assistant clerk who has been in place since I think the end of March. She's wonderful. We are up to date. The numbers have been crunched, and you have those this evening. And also there have been some very big numbers going through there, which caused my head to explode. And I would like to thank Graham Corney, resident chartered accountant, for putting me straight on a couple of things where I had to say, please tell me I've got this the right way around. So we had
you did very well. I didn't have to actually intervene at all. And I'd just like to mention, I am still a chartered accountant, but I am retired from my previous company. So it was purely me, if I may put it that way. Thank you.
That's fine. It's very good to have a chartered accountant on the team. That's what I would say. So who answers my calls at ridiculous times in the evening. So that's fine. So as a result, the proposed year-end finances are with you this evening. They have not yet been audited, but they will do. So they may be subject to some adjustments, or depending on your decisions this evening. But that's what I expect we will go through with. And as soon as I can complete the year-end adjustments, we will be moving to some new software, which is what our internal auditors recommended and you approved last year. So on the finances, everything is moving ahead swimmingly. By the next time this committee meets on the 30th of September, we should have figures for you right up to the end of August. So we should be smack up to date at that meeting. And I think that's all I have to say.
Okay. Alison.
Could I ask just a couple of questions about the allotments? What's the latest number of how many allotments we think are needed at the moment? How many people are on the waiting list?
It's still the same number that I told you, I can't remember which meeting, I think it's 24. But
okay.
Given that some people do not appear to be, working the allotments that they've got, I'm hoping to be able to release more than we thought. But we also have to be fairly kind to people when they go, so that they have a month's notice or something to remove any plants that they've had there, for a long time.
Okay. And how long do you think you'll allow to find another site to lease? How long do you think you're going to allow before maybe looking at other options?
The only options are to find land in this area. Was it Mark Twain said, buy land, they're not making it anymore. We will have to find some. If we're not able to find some, we won't be able to provide additional allotments. But I'm hopeful that we will find some.
Okay, and would you consider working with Bucks Council to compulsory lease some land if you can't negotiate some?
Of course.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item 7. And I just want to flag up the point again that you only need to declare an interest if you think there is something relevant on this evening's agenda that you may in some way have a connection with. Anyone want to declare anything at that point?
I'll declare that I'm a unitary councillor for the purposes of part 2.
Okay. Alison the same, Anita the same? Okay, thank you. So moving on to item 8, which is the financial statements for the year ending March 2021. You were issued with a bank reconciliation with payment reports, a profit and loss account, a balance sheet, and a budget report. The bank reconciliation is not something that we see that often, probably once a year. So it's not really, as long as the numbers are balanced, then we don't tend to need to look at that too closely, because if there were any problems, then it would be picked up by the auditor. But having got our own sort of star man involved here, there's no need for us to worry too much about that. Payment reports, I mean, it's a very long list, page after page, of all the payments throughout the year. I would suggest that if anyone has a specific query about a particular payment, we take that up separately with Alexa, either at the end of the session or perhaps tomorrow. But generally speaking, it's simply a list of what's come out of the Sage accounts. As far as profit and loss and balance sheet is concerned, we can come back to those in a moment, but I think the key thing that you might want to look at, which we tend to use as our main barometer, is the budget report. That shows you for the 12-month period all of the income broken down by individual headings and all of the overheads in a similar way. And for those of you who might be new to this, the reality is that you have to set out with the aim of a balanced budget, which means that you don't make a profit and you don't make a loss. The idea is to be as close as you can be to a sort of variance that is basically zero. Now, in most years, we do tend to come in quite close. In the last 12 months, it's been a little bit of a nightmare, as you can imagine. And the first headline is that we were short by £33,000 in terms of the expected income that we had budgeted for and planned for the 12-month period. Interestingly, however, at the same time, we did not spend £59,000, which we thought we would spend. And that would be for a variety of reasons, but one very significant reason was the fact that we had budgeted for a town caretaker. And because of the pandemic kicking off at the time that it did, that appointment never took place. So we basically ended the year with a surplus of £26,000. Now that will be rolled forward into the current year. It's not going to be hived off. It will be available in addition to the new precept. Alexa.
It's not really, it goes into the general fund, but it's not lost, but we'll still have to precept an exact budget.
Okay,
You don't
but
get-
it's
you don't get
it's
to add the 20,000 on top.
is it money that can be used? That's what I think members want to know.
It's your money. It's your money,
Okay.
and it will be in your reserves. But when you go through your budget process over the final quarter, you will write a budget which may include it or may not. That will be your choice.
Okay, thank you for that. So I think really, if you look line by line through all of the income and all of the overheads, which you can do at your leisure, or if there is something specific that you'd like to ask this evening, then we will try to answer. But typically, there are some things that will be tracking quite closely the budget, and there will be other things where things haven't quite worked out. And clearly, our big problem this year has been the loss of income in the town hall, both from weekly hirers and from people who were basically renting on long-term leases. And as we mentioned at the last meeting in March, one of our principal tenant actually did go out of business. So that was a major blow for us. So there will be ups and downs in terms of the actual spend or the actual income versus the budget. But as I've said, on this occasion, we have a surplus that is quite unusual. Did somebody want to say something then? No? Okay. So moving in the direction of the balance sheet, I think. Just bear with me 1 second whilst I find my balance sheet. Okay. So our balance sheet is made up of amounts of money that are paid owing to us, money that we have at the bank, money that we have either on a treasury or deposit account, and small amounts of petty cash. At the same time, we also have sums of money that are owed to other people. We have accruals where we know that we're going to spend some money in the future, but that has not yet been incurred. We are always likely to be having some liabilities in respect of PAYE and national insurance. And on top of that, there will always be a VAT liability that has to be discharged at some future point. Clearly, because of what happened last year, which involved a sale of land, we have some rather larger numbers on the balance sheet than we would normally have had in previous years. And the headline number, I think, that most people would have been interested in would have been the sale of land itself, from which the net proceeds were 1.7 million. And that basically took into account all the costs associated with the sale. So these figures are not figures that we are in any way concealing, but there are some areas where there are commercially sensitive agreements that have been made, which are lawful and which we have to observe. But as far as things go, you can see that the balance sheet is particularly healthy at this time. So the only other thing to mention is that we do have reserves, and reserves typically may be small amounts that are associated with, for example, a future election where you have to pay for elections to take place locally. The town plan, we generally reserve some money associated with the cost of producing a town plan. And I know that we have a new town plan scheduled to be produced at the end of this year. We also have a small amount of money in the Christmas lights replacement fund. And we have a very big sum of money that we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail later, associated with grass cutting. And effectively, 3 or 4 years ago, we entered into an agreement with the Buckinghamshire Council, or Bucks County Council as it was then known, whereby we agreed to take on the grass cutting responsibilities in the, should we say, significant areas where you need specialist safety equipment, and where typically the speed limit will be over 30 miles an hour. It's generally something that you couldn't do yourself. Bucks County Council were doing it, and we agreed to take on the responsibility in exchange for an annual payment. Sorry, I lost my connection for a second. In exchange for an annual payment, which I think is somewhere around about 21,000, is that correct?
Yeah, you can see
And
that on the budget.
Yes.
okay, so we are spending at the moment about 24,000. We're getting 21,000 in every year, but we also know that this arrangement that we entered into will not last forever. Therefore, we have been providing at the rate of an extra £10,000 per year. So we've now built up a fund in case we suddenly have to do it all ourselves. And at the moment, we're between 3 and 4 years funded in advance. So if something went wrong in that sort of arrangement at the moment, then we know that we've got sufficient funds to cover us for the next 3 to 4 years. There is no indication at present that the arrangement is about to change. But I would like to talk about it a little bit more later on. We also have got £50,000 reserved in the playground equipment fund, which we know we're going to use most of that fairly immediately for Malthouse Square. And then I think it's probably worth mentioning that we have close on £75,000 associated with dilapidations to the town hall itself. It's common that when you come to the end of a lease, that your landlord says to you, if you're going, I want you to put the building back into the same kind of order which we gave it to you in. And right now, we know that the building is in some state of disrepair, and the dilapidations could be significant. Hence the reason why we have been providing something like £8,000 per annum over a fairly long period. I think also it's probably just worth mentioning that the lease on the town hall is due to expire in December 2022. So what was a few years ago, a few years in the making, is now getting very close. So that's an issue that we are already starting to talk to the Unitary Authority about. And finally, I think on this, this subject, we do have some other monies that are what we call ring fenced, where we have some money sitting in a part of the accounts which has already been earmarked for a particular spend, and it's a spend that is very clearly defined. So, for example, we are holding at the moment £9,800 on behalf of the water fountain group, and when the day comes when this water fountain has to be paid for, we will pay for it out of the funds that we're holding. And there are other things, such as we have an item of £1,350 associated with Sandalswood End Road, where there are some additional trees that are going to be planted. And that figure is about.
That's actually what we saved them. So we're going to give that back to them because it was their money.
Okay, fine. Okay, right. Well, it seems like these ring fence funds are going to be given away. Okay, so that's really where we are with accounts at the moment. And has anybody got any questions that I might be able to answer, or Alison?
I was just wondering if you could tell us what's the income in grants that you obtain for the neighbourhood plan, and what's the expenditure on the neighbourhood plan?
Well, I think there are two sums that we've so far had from locality, but who are the people that issue the grant? Alexa, what are the amounts, you know?
The amounts are changing because we have been a bit delayed. The locality money has to be used within a particular year because it is a government fund. So I think I'm trying to remember what the amounts were, but I think we'd applied for 9,500, but because we hadn't advanced as far as we had wanted to, we had to give about £4,500 back for the end of the year, for the end of March, and then we've applied for it again. So it's coming back again, but we are applying for the full amount, which I'm afraid I can't remember off the top of my head, but for the full amount of the locality funding that is available to us. And if we see any ability to apply for some more, we will do.
Alex? You're on mute, Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick report, going back to the overheads. Just a quick one on the vandalism, which is quite huge, £6,000. Was that the traveller incursion?
No, that was pure vandalism, mostly by children.
Over the year?
Yeah, it was a much higher vandalism this year than we normally see. Part of that was due to the age of stuff at Malthouse Square, where they learned that the wood was rotting out on the post, because a lot of it was wooden and going into the ground. They learned to sort of kick out the posts and then we'd replace them over the following weeks, and then they'd come back and kick out the next ones. We spent a lot on vandalism this year.
That is quite high. I was going to say it sort of begs a decision to put CCTV in there. I think that would be a definite reason. If you think how much that's cost us and how much the CCTV would, I think. Plus
the traveller incursion, I think I put under the Malthouse Square code. So I think that's £5,610 by the time we'd paid the bailiff and clean up and put in the temporary bund, which we're going to take out again and replace with bollards. It was an expensive year for
it was, wasn't it? Because is there another question? Is there any insurance that we have to cover against this or not?
Yeah, so there will be claims coming through. Which way I will offset against those, and I've got Tracy working on those, so hopefully we'll get some of that back. But there's always an excess, and what you tend to find is it just means your premium goes up the following year.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Alison, you had another question, I think.
It was just a follow-up, really. Thank you for explaining about the locality grants that are coming in. But how much are you actually spending on the neighbourhood plan, the consultants and so on?
Well, what we hadn't spent, we had to give back. That's how it worked. So we will spend every penny that we get, and we did budget for more. I can't remember quite what the figures were. I think we can claim either 9 or 12, and I think we had budgeted a contingency above that, which we didn't make public in case our consultant wanted to bill it anyway. So that I can talk to you separately outside the meeting about those.
Okay, thank you.
And
Okay.
I did want to add one point.
I want to. Sorry.
I have included in, I don't know if you're already coming to it, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but if you're going to move on from the reserves, there is a new reserve in there which I have calculated, which you would need to.
I'm just about to mention it.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay. It needs a bit of explanation, this, but in essence, when we started the project with the medical centre, we began with some costs that were incurred that at that particular time, those costs went straight through the income and expenditure budget report, whereas they should actually have been allocated to a specific project, which was the Parkway Strip. So we had paid for a number of items that is in the region of about £23,000 that we have now basically taken back out of the cost area because it was in the wrong place, and we have got £23,000 therefore that constitutes a reserve in its own right. Now, I am very conscious and very concerned that there are potential road safety issues in the area of the proposed medical centre, or the new medical centre as it is now. And I feel that we should start a reserve that really is associated with trying to mitigate the impact of traffic in the area insofar as it affects the new situation around the medical centre. Now, this is not, shall we say, an action in isolation, because at the same time, we have applied for some consultation associated with 3 speed limits around the town. And one of those is on the A40 between Holtspur and the Old Town itself. So there's a lot of talk about moving bus stops potentially, whether or not you should consider traffic calming measures, whether or not you might want to put in a crossing and so forth, so on. And I think that we are conscious of the fact that we have got this £23,000 that we could put to one side. We could add to it potentially from the Section 106 agreement associated with this Parkway Strip, and also any SIL money that is further associated. So if you look at it in total, we could actually be in a position to perhaps match fund anything that we might be able to get from the Unitary Authority as this all develops. But as it stands at the moment, rather than lose that £23,000 in a sort of a general direction, I'd like to propose that we do follow through on what Alexa has put in the capital and reserves, and that is to have a reserve heading, which we will call traffic mitigation on the A40, which should be used to assist with any measures that we can successfully implement in the next sort of 6 to 9 months, or maybe even going beyond that. So I'd be interested in any comments. Anita?
Just a minute, I'm not on it. What have you got ongoing in terms of petitions with the community board? There is an A40 traffic restriction order, isn't there? That's all in that area, isn't it, with the community board?
Alexa?
I think it actually covered 3 areas. It covered the A40, it covered Windsor End, and it may have been St Mary's, or it may have been a request for a 20-mile-an-hour in all school zones.
Oh, okay, there were 3. Yeah.
So there were 3 that went onto the one petition, and that will come to the TFB Community Board at the end of this month.
It's the 28th of July.
Yeah, they will, and will be paid out quite quickly by September. Can I ask a second question? In the 106 agreement that was made, was there mention of the footpath between Hotspur and Old Town, and was there mention of moving the bus stops?
Alexa?
I think it was quite vague, and I think it was just to assist with travel
Okay.
in the immediate vicinity.
Okay.
So it started off specific, but it got vaguer by the time it got signed.
Okay. Thank you.
Alison?
I just wanted to mention that Jackson and I earlier this evening met with some residents who have a serious problem with parking, as do many of people in the town. And I know they've also been in contact with Anita. And I know that the 3 of us unitary councillors really do want to help them. And you've just mentioned these community board applications, and I foresee that there will be other applications coming through, which may involve the town council being asked to potentially match fund other, I don't know, parking schemes or road schemes. Do you think we'd be looking at including that some potential in the sort of provision that you're mentioning?
My view is that this particular sum of money was really very directly associated with the Parkway Strip, and I think that because the impact on traffic in the area is generally perceived to be concerning, then I do think that we have a duty to try and help as much as we can on this specific issue. The 23,000 is not going to, be all that is needed, either in one place or another. But I mean, as far as the area that you were visiting this evening is concerned, yes, there are equal issues associated with the density of traffic in that area, and I've seen the proposals that have been made, but I also recognise that the unitary authority will be more directly involved in any decision with regard to solutions for that particular area. Alexa, do you want to comment on it?
The expenses that were incurred were very specifically on that project, and I think given the result that came in the end, they should be specifically associated with that. This was also an area that I was discussing with Graham this week, because I was concerned that because they had been expensed, you know, that I wouldn't be able to do this. And in commercial terms, what Graham was saying was that that would be a prior year adjustment, which typically in parish accounting terms is not possible, because we don't have a brought forward profit and loss account. We just have the general fund. And that's what Alistair is concerned, that this will disappear into the general fund. People have been very vocal about their concerns. And one of the things that we do have is the concern about the traffic, the speed of the traffic, which is why we've put in an application separately to have a consultation done on that, because people are going to have to get on a bus or get off a bus on the other side of the A40 to get to the medical centre. And, you know, I really don't want elderly people or young people playing chicken on a 50-mile-an-hour road to get there. And I mean, a crossing would be £100,000. So our 23,000 would be, you know, almost a drop in the ocean. But at least we'd be showing willing. Plus we have, we don't have, Bucks have the Section 106 money, which I think is 20,000. And Anita also mentioned the state of the footpath all the way from Holtspur to Wickham End is looking disastrous. Alistair's pointed that out to me this week as well, up at North Drive, which I've had someone look at. The surface has completely failed. So people with buggies or wheelchairs trying to get to bus stops or to the medical centre, there are issues, and whilst they might not be anyone's fault particularly, they are still issues, and we do have to make people accessible to this new facility for the town. So I would suggest, because those costs were incurred very specifically for that they should be, that's why I've proposed that reserve for them. Other projects that come along have to be treated as they come along. And we do have obviously a capital injection, as Alistair said, on the balance sheet, a large one. And we can consider capital projects as we go along, but they will have to be capital projects rather than revenue and expenditure projects, because we are restricted in how certain monies can be spent. But we can always apply if it's appropriate for us to apply, or to support or to request that the unitary authority undertake those other projects. Sorry if that's a bit vague.
No, I mean, it's good to hear willingness to support, actually, because I know that people will really appreciate that. So thank you.
Okay. Does anybody, strongly disagree with the suggestion? No?
No.
So shall we confirm then that we're in agreement with your proposed reserve under the heading traffic mitigation?
Second.
Okay. All right, thank you. Right,
Yes.
Let's move on to item 10, which is Town Council resources. That's you, Alexa.
Okay, this is kind of a throwback from the previous agenda. We were concerned about what was happening with the football at Woburn Green Lane because of the lockdown and restrictions. And obviously you can see on the budget report that our sporting income was down. They weren't able to play. There was a concern that it would sort of all roll forward into next year, but actually it wasn't really billed at that point by our previous admin. So we didn't have to give any refunds or carry forward. And then people have paid when they've started playing again. And also because the state of the pitches is quite good, although I still haven't spent as much on maintenance because the pitches weren't played as much, then we were able to offer some space to other teams who don't normally play there, because there is a shortage of football pitches in South Bucks, especially at a reasonable standard. And our standard is coming up year on year now. The quality of the ground, it looks really good down there. at the moment, and the quality is much better. And I would hope that we get another report from the Bucks and Berks FA, and I would hope to put a request to you to replace the goalposts this year. I know we keep talking about it, and it will come through open spaces, but we really need to do that. So although our income was down, people are very keen to play there, and we've also, with our new assistant clerk, she's picked up that there are some anomalies on how people use the pitches, when they use them and when they're paying for them. And we could have more play in there, but it seems that some teams have the pitches at times when we could be letting them to smaller clubs, and we will be looking to review all those contracts. So I think quality is coming up. We haven't put the prices up for years, and I wouldn't suggest we do that yet, but I think we probably will be looking to do that as we improve the facility each year. And that is probably really, because I think the town hall we'll talk about in part 2. So I don't think I actually have any other resources to talk about. Sandy has his hand up.
Andy,
You're on
muted. You're on mute.
You're still muted, Sandy.
Right. I haven't got quite the dexterity in my hand that allows me to talk clearly when it's muted. The reason I'm asking a question in relation to Woburn Green playing fields is that I noted coming north up the hill from Woburn, quite a lot of work had been done, it appeared to me anyway, in levelling the ground, and those 2 iron boxes that I complained about at one recent meeting have now been removed. I just wonder whether you could tell me if there's been any developments with Bucks County on that land.
I'm not aware. I think Councillor Dunlop mentioned that last week, and he said he'd been down there, and it looked like they were doing some work in the car park. I don't know if it's Bucks or if it's or what they're doing, but I certainly haven't been informed of anything. I will try to find out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 11. I think really it's for us to note the fact that the Community and Safety Committee did more or less, I think, give support to reinstating the community bus project at the recent meeting. But there is a need, obviously, for further analysis and proposals with regard to how we put back the community bus before we actually do it. And that really will have financial implications that will almost certainly come back to this committee in October. But I just want you to be aware of the fact that in broad terms, the community bus project will be reinstated. Whether we go for any kind of electric vehicle, or whether we simply hire a petrol driven for the purposes of however long the trial continues, I don't know. That will be something that will come back to us at the next meeting. And also, Community and Safety did discuss CCTV systems, and I believe that again, we will be expecting that group to undertake some kind of review and to make proposals with regard to the direction that we now take. So item 11 is really just updating you on requests for expenditure that we believe will come from that committee. Alexa, Old Town toilets, any update there?
Yep, 2 updates. First was that, again, I think there may have been a little bit of easing of the path with the Unitary Authority, and we got advised again ahead of the official thing that they would be giving us the permission, which of course had blocked everything. So that permission came through, and the tender has been issued. I think we've had 4 builders tender for that project, which obviously went out on the government site as well, because we expect it to be fairly above the threshold that we have to put that out to. So I'm hoping to have a report on that, I would hope, by full council on the 22nd, but I haven't seen the report yet. But then we will need to select one of those tenders to carry on and get on with the work, hopefully as soon as possible. It would be good. So that's that one. The other one, on the Malthouse Square replacement, we lost a bit of ground on that. Obviously, we lost our project manager to Corona for 10 days, which was unfortunate. So that slowed us down. We also had to go through some additional legal work, which originally Jackson had helped us with, but we had to then officially go through someone that was not associated with the council. And we realised that the delivery was going to happen smack bang in the middle of the summer holidays, which is not a great idea. So, and in fact, I spoke to one of the residents in Malthouse Square and told them that we were going to be delaying it. And so we're going, the latest installation date I have now is 6th of September, which is after the children will be back at school, because I think now that we realise it's going to probably take 3 weeks, we can't close Malthouse Square for 3 weeks in July. It's just not doable. So people are fairly happy with that. And as I say, the date I have for the commencement is the 6th of September. We've also been down and looked at the temporary bund. Obviously, lots of councillors came with us on an asset tour, or our new councillors came with us on an asset tour. Alex drove everyone round in a big bus, and we looked at that bund, which we will replace with bollards which match the lockable, droppable bollard, so it will be secure when we do that.
I just wanted to say I will be going around again, because I know Alison is very keen to go around, and we've got a few others as well. So I will be proposing another visit around the sites, and they're great to see. So it will happen. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Right, that concludes the part 1. The only other item to mention is that the date of the next meeting will be the 30th of September. And as Alex has already mentioned, we would hope to have the accounts up to date as at the end of August, by the time that we meet next. So at this point, I think I will ask the public and the press to leave, and thank you for being with us.